Hello and welcome to Anime Lore and Theory video. I'm Shergog, your host, and today we are going to take a closer look at who would win in an all-out fight, äzesshizetsumei or her own evil father, the Elf King depraved. But before we're going to take a closer look at any of this, let me quickly thank my Patreons for supporting this channel, as well as say thanks to all users of the YouTube thanks function for making one-time donations. And with that said, let's get to the topic at hand. Father-son duels are absolutely nothing new in the realm of anime and manga. Think of Baki Hanma against Papi Hanma, Yami Yugi vs Seto Kaiba, or Arthas, who very successfully took over his own kingdom after an extremely short surprise duel with his father. And they are all very good examples of this kind of duel. Other media have also great father-son duels, such as Tyrion against Tywin, or the famous Clegane Bowl, which were really great moments in Game of Thrones. It's such a shame that the series was cancelled after season 4, when it was just realized that the rest of the plot would make no sense whatsoever without Tyrion's first wife. But maybe there will be a reboot someday. But surprisingly, father-daughter duels are extremely rare. I mean, sure, Cersei tried to duel with Tywin on an intellectual level, but she was quite unarmed. The question then is, what would a life or death father-daughter duel look like in Overlord? Specifically, what would the fight between äzesshizetsumei, the theocracy's strongest godkin, and her father the Elf King depraved, the son of one of the 8 kings of Everest, look like? And I know what you're thinking. The duel already happened, and Zashi clearly won, crushing the Elf King under her steel boots like the repulsive vermin he was. But that wasn't a real duel, because firstly, only one of them knew it was taking place, and secondly, depraved has used up all of his mana and was extremely weak, and severely weakened further by Einsolgon's reality slash and the exploding mines that had almost shredded his legs. Even though he could run away, it was impossible for him to permanently escape Mare. In other words, the question was never whether the Elf King would emerge alive and intact, but only whether Zashi would crush him, or whether Team Foresight and the other invaders of the Great Tomb of Nazarick would enjoy some other different company than just Nuanist Painkill, or the countless cockroaches in Kyohoku's black capsule, after the Overlord had squeezed the absolute last bit of useful knowledge out of the Elf King. But what if Ainz had never decided to plunder the Elf Palace, and thus never fought depraved? Or if the duel had taken place at a later date, or if he was never discovered in the first place? Or if the priorities of the Elf King were different? Let's say the Overlord of Nazarick had first looted the treasury vault, because he had heard footsteps and feared being seen by the slain theocracy already, while depraved, though he realized that Aura and Mare were there, perceived the elf children as a lesser threat compared to äzesshizetsumei. And of course, that will be the reason why he fights Zashi first. And I think the first phase of the duel will be more about the mental level. The Elf King will certainly recognize that Zashi is somehow different, because unlike Zashi, he correctly recognized that Mare is not an elf girl. Probably because he sees elves every single day and can assess from his own experience how strong and how elegant elves move, and how much motory control they have over their own movement. And so, something will be different about the half-elf Zashi. Dekem, even though he is socially rather ignorant, would probably notice that this elf before him is powerful, and that something is off, and of course that the items that she has are of the highest quality. And Dekem was in the slain theocracy before, when he abducted Zashi's mother, so he will likely either immediately realize that the enemy before him is his own daughter, or at least have it in the back of his mind that the theocracy of Slain has his own daughter still with them, and that the enemy before him is wearing armors and weaponry from the theocracy, and thus come to the same conclusion. And that's why he will probably try to win Zashi over to his own side first, which is doomed to fail from the start. The guy behaved more like a Discord mod towards Aura and Mare already, two younger elves, and not like a father or grandfather figure. And yes, Dakem thought the twins were his actual grandchildren. In other words, he will in any case not be able to convince Zashi to help him with his world domination project, for which he wants to enlist his offspring. He will probably say something like, "The theocracy never told you the truth about your father, because I am your father. Follow me, and together we will rule the world." Whereupon Zashi coldly replies that she knew who he was all along. And while she thinks of her own terrible and loveless childhood, she hesitates for just a moment. Then, with hatred in her heart and anger in her eyes, she will look at him and say, "I am here to eliminate you, father." Cautiously, before testing his own daughter's strength, Dakem will then, just as in the fight against Ainz, whom he considered a lesser threat than Aura and Mare, cast Mercy of Shoria Robusta, a 10th tier spell that protects against instant death magic, grants some self-healing, and revives the caster with minimal HP without level loss, should he be struck down by an enemy attack. And as stated, the name of Antilin Heran Fosh, again äzesshizetsumei, means certain death, so Dakem has a good reason to protect himself. However, Zashi lives up to her nickname and rushes towards Dakem with lightning speed. And even if the hit doesn't mean lights out for him, the scythe blade of Soshana will still leave deep mark that, unlike Ainz Solgon's punch, will not heal easily or quickly. And Dakem, after decades of being unassailable, will realize here, much faster than in the fight against Ainz, who was only playing with him anyway, to lull him into this false sense of security and superiority, only to then catch him like a Pokémon once he ran out of mana, that Zashi in truth is a serious enemy, and he will act accordingly. And so Zashi's ice-cold gaze looked surprise when her father blocked it by a rock entity, a living wall of stone. Dakem Hugin's greatest ace upon his sleeves, the trump card of his own father, one of the 8 kings of Everis himself, the primal earth elemental, stood in front of Zashi and struck with full force. And Zashi's level 88, and her armor comes from the wind god of Slain, who was likely a very high level player, probably level 100 because after all they had a world-class item with them. A highly coveted item in a game where basically everyone at their summon was level 100. And apparently, like the outfit of Ainz, who was observing the situation from cover, concealed by perfect unknowable, she was able to withstand the blow without much issue. But for the Elemental, who was only level 87, and for the Earth Elemental, Zashi only appeared to be slightly stronger than him. Because while Zashi had numerous classes and spells and skills that Dakem could only dream of, his Elemental was a focused melee machine, and the subsequent blow, which was also blocked by Zashi's weapon, the size of the god of death of Slain, Soshana, was quite unfavorable, because the fingers of the left hand that held the scythe with all of its with all of Zashi's force were directly struck by the fist, and it felt like they were between a hammer and an anvil, and a throbbing pain shot immediately from the godkin's fingers directly into her head, which then began to sail towards the floor. Zashi, who noticed the outstretched leg of her father out of the corner of her eyes, because he had just performed a spinning kick against her head, chastised herself for this carelessness. Meanwhile, the Elemental took another swing and hit Zashi, now flying down through the air directly in the solar plexus. The force of the impact was so enormous that Zashi was hurled through 3 rooms, and that half of the ceilings collapsed. Hugan smiled contently. After the Elf King had spent centuries trying to sire a worthy successor, he would now raise an entire army of strong elves to seize the world domination and establish a dynasty that would never end. But just as he was about to move towards the pile of rubble where his daughter must have been buried, a silhouette, veiled in dust, shot out from the left side. His elemental promptly attacked again, and the resilience Zesshi still had after the first blow began to fade, and the silhouette was slightly pushed back by the elf elemental strike. A moment later, the king's laughter got stuck in his own throat, because a second figure ran towards him, seemingly wounded, but still combative. The lorder quickly returned as Dakim guessed that his daughter could still fight, but was probably severely wounded. Then a well-placed kick hit his figure harder than he actually intended, because a moment later Dakim understood that his leg was between the ribs of an undead warrior, a Spartan, as he suddenly saw a scythe rushing towards him from the corner of his eye. He pushed off the floor with his other leg to dodge, and indeed, Zeshi's first swing missed, and seemingly got stuck in the floor, with the scythe splitting it like soft butter. Only then did Zesshi brace herself on the shaft of the scythe and hit the king's shin directly with a skyward kick of her armored foot. The force was so great that his tongue was bitten off by his own teeth, which then shattered before Dakem's head hammered against the ceiling. Behemoth! A telepathic command called the elemental to him to deal with Zesshi and Einherja, her clone. But even his powerful elemental alone would not be able to stand against the two of them. Frustration and pride mingled in his gaze as he fell from the ceiling and executed a clean 3-point landing. He of course wanted to target Zesshi, only to realize that he saw another undead warrior in every cardinal direction. Before the first spear thrust of the Spartan could sweep his elf's opponent's legs away, Dakim jumped upwards under his daughter's eyes. A kick to each side took out each Spartan on his side, and a blow with both of his arms, the other two. Elf cannon! Dakim, with his bitten off tongue, aimed at his ignorant daughter, who had turned back to the elemental, and was putting enormous pressure on it, together with her clone. Dakim also felt the mana leaving him, and he knew he had to end his fight quickly. And the cannonball shattered the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and barely even the fifth target, but missed Zesshi. Another 5 Spartans had fallen. But the Earth Elemental was losing more and more ground. It wouldn't last much longer. It was risky, but Dakim had to sacrifice his necklace, an item that protected him from time magic to avoid losing the fight. With a skilled leap, Dakim wanted to play it safe and take out the weakest link in the chain with his necklace. A grab passed Einherja's blade, that again struck Behemoth, and the elegant necklace was wrapped around her neck. Freeze flame! This 10th tier time magic spell inherent in his necklace instantly froze Einherja, and Zesshi was now alone. Before she could finish her sentence, clearly a plea for mercy from his daughter, Dakim and the elemental beat her through the ceiling. Yet, even in his moment of triumph, Dakim had to admit that without a bow and an arrow, and without a staff and combat items, he would have had enormous problems against Zesshi, without his father's elemental. But never mind that, this was exactly the strength he wanted, and while Dakim restrained Zeshi's arms, Behemoth struck Zeshi's head, and not even Dakim was able to hold onto her. The Elf King could only grab off her helmet, and Zesshi fell to the ground, or rather, through the ground, multiple levels deep. With her last strength, she pointed her scythe at Dakim, but then anger, rage and despair mingled in Zeshi's face as she noticed that the elemental was attacking from the side and threatened to smash her head in with a single blow. Reluctantly, the godkin pointed the tip of the scythe menacingly at the elemental, and he thought to himself, as if that would do Before Deckham could finish his sentence, he was shocked and awed. The elemental dissolved into mere dust, which almost completely now filled the room. Windgust. Deckham, with his mana reserves now almost completely depleted, had to prevent Zashi from taking advantage of the moment to re-summon an Harrier. But as the dust cleared, Deckham saw his daughter in an unusual position. She was leaning forward, cat-like, both of her legs pressed against the palace timber frame. Stride of wind, ability boost, greater ability boost. Zashi's armor began to glow for a brief moment. Its creator, the wind god only known as Neko, had equipped her armor with an effect that further increased speed bonuses. Thus empowered, and with the scythe in her right hand, Zashi shot towards Deckham. He pushed himself off the ground again, but he couldn't keep up with Zashi's speed. A swing of the scythe inflicted the worst critical hit he had ever suffered. He was split between the legs until his heart was almost hit, and the scream of pain died down because his lung was torn and perforated from below. Before the shock fully registered, the Elf King lost consciousness. But he regained it shortly afterwards, when a boot was resting on his body and applied pressure. It felt to him as he was losing his life once more, and again Deckham's vision went black. Zashi breathed heavily. The ability boost put immense stress on her body, which is why she always made sure to quickly end a fight when she was forced to use these abilities. Zashi flinched as a clattering clap echoed through the room, but the sound quickly faded in the dust of the chamber. A dark yet regal voice made it clear that Zashi's ability far exceeded those of the Undead King, which meant that his Overlord must know the basic principles of this technique, even though he was clearly a caster. Standing before Zashi was the Undead Overlord of Nazarick, Ein Soul Gone. And so was something similar in that way. A theoretical hypothetical fight between Zashi and her own father at full health could have turned out, at least in my opinion. But what is yours? Let me know it down in the comment section. And while you type, I say thank you very much for watching, thanks to all of my Patreons for supporting this channel, and as usual, I say my special thanks to Other Daddy Other, ASK, Bad Guy Yee, Bad Burrito 316, Beezer, Ben C, Brandon S, Brandon D, Chrissy, Crowley 0221, Sia, Crystal Prime, Dead Slime, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Demon Xenomorph 1987, Devin Downen, Ding Dong, Din Pep, Dragonlord Placido Saxophone, Duckwagon, Dunkler Krieger, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Enigmatic Unicorn, Feralchivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, J. Morris, Chromius, Kyle R, Lee K. Long, Legendarius, Le Louche Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Lofrazer, Merowek, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Nope, Oh Hell No, Normal Toad, Oh Kill, Overlord General Gaspar, Paddy Pentum, Personage, Ruru, Primus 11, Rhinomere, Q&A Caracos P, Shergox's Daddy, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Sir Axolotl, Super Tier Magic Batista Bomb, Supreme Cheese, Staris, Ted, Texas Deer, The Orc War Boss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, Xenokai, and Sonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.